Okay, so we just saw the how we lined up in the Central Division. I might share my screen one more time so we can kick off with that. But so again, the Bucks and Cavs are 1 and 2 for all of us. The Bulls are 3 for all of us, and the Pistons and Pacers are 4 and 5. So it's pretty easy to see that division for all three of us. But any talk about how we Dustin, why do the Cavs get past the Bucks with this new roster?
Something I talked about with the Cavs is they had that year where their bench was kind of in flux because of all the trades that they had. Now they've now filled that out. And now the Bucks are in that same position where they've had this big trade and have lost a lot of those pieces. And as a result, I think that this is going to be a flip flop. That the Cavs will be able to take one while the Bucks figure out how to rotate and get their team in place. I had no way. I still expect the Bucks to be a top 4 team in the East.
Yeah,
But the Cavs being number 1 or 2.
I can see that. Yeah. I yeah, I actually picked the Bucks to finish first even before the trade happened with Damian Lillard, and so I think bringing him over. I know you lose Drew Holiday, which is a big loss, but I still think the Bucks are going to finish one. And like you, it very well could be the Bucks are number 1 and the Cavs are number 3 in the East. And so like these two teams are two of the best in the NBA. And so any thoughts, Cody, or should we go on?
Um, Not really any additional thought. I guess I after you explain that, Dustin, I can see your point, and it's valid. I can see that. So, I agree though that I still think the Bucks can do it.
Okay. We're on to the Southwest Division. We're in the Western Conference now. So shifting focus a little bit, starting with the Dallas Mavericks. Um, if you recall, the Mavericks were right on that fringe of the playoffs, and Jason Kidd sat his best players, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. He sat them for the last game or two so that they would lose, so that they would fall out completely out of the playoffs and get a better draft position. They were actually fined for that after investigation because they tanked their last 2 games. You don't see that happen very often, but they didn't want to play in the play-in game. They wanted a little bit better draft positioning, a chance at the lottery, even as bad a chance as that would be. And NBA didn't like that, and they fined them for it. So Mavericks have a lot of changes. 3 new additions that I'm projecting in their starting lineup. Before I get to the two mainstays, obviously, Luka Doncic, All NBA last year, averaging 32 points, 8 assists. He's one of the best players in the world, and the Mavericks should be a lot better with him than they were last year. Kyrie Irving, I've voiced my opinions about him before. I think he's an idiot as a person. As a player, though, 27 points and 6 assists. He's a heck of a basketball player, and having those two join in the backcourt should be really good. Now to get to the new additions, Grant Williams comes over from the Celtics. Rashawn Holmes, who fell out of favor in Sacramento. You can see he only averaged 3 points and 2 rebounds a game last year. He kind of fell out of that complete rotation, but he's been a starter before, and he's been really good before. Looking at their options, he could play a lot at power forward. I'm projecting him to start. Derek Lively is their draft pick out of Duke. He's huge, 7'1", 230. But you can see he only averaged 5 points, 5 rebounds at Duke. That's because he only played 1 season, came off the bench a couple of times, but he has insane athleticism, especially blocking shots down in the paint. Depth. They also had a first-round pick in Olivier Maxence Prosper out of Marquette. Dwight Powell could also start at center. If Rashawn Holmes, you can move Derek Lively to power forward. There's possibilities there. Seth Curry comes back to Dallas. He was in Dallas a couple of years ago before moving to Brooklyn. He's a great shooter. Obviously, the Curry family has those. Derek Jones comes over from the Bulls. Greg Brown comes over from the Trailblazers. Joe Weiskamp comes over from the Raptors. And then you still have Jaden Hardy, Josh Green and Maxi Kleba, as well as Tim Hardaway, who's their sixth man. Great player off the bench who could start as well. A lot of moving pieces there, and we'll talk about that in a second. Jason Kidd in his third season with the Mavericks. He played for the Mavericks for a lot of his career. This is a Hall of Fame player that's returning as head coach. Darrell Armstrong in his 15th season, every single one of them, obviously with the Mavericks as a head coach or as an assistant coach. He has the chops to be a head coach in this league. Jared Dudley, not long removed from playing in the NBA, now in his third season as an assistant coach. Where were we in this rotation? Is it Cody?
I think we're on me now. So, we got to focus on Luka. He's fantastic in every sense of the word. I think he won MVP, didn't he? No, he not win him. Okay, but he was in the running for it. Obviously, he had to be. Who did win MVP?
Joel Embiid.
Joel Embiid. Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So Luka is one heck of a ball player, and I think that any team who has him, they're going to be dangerous. And so the Mavericks are automatically dangerous just because of that. They have quite a bit of shifting around, as I can see, in their starting lineup and on their bench. And so I think this season might be more about, other than just get the ball to Luka, and also just gel, try to make sure that everyone can get some chemistry on court. And if they can do that, then they should have a shot at not just the playoffs, but at a run down the stretch too. And so that's what I expect, especially if you have Luka on the team. So, yeah. What are your thoughts? Your thoughts on that?
So, looking at the Mavs the last few years, I feel like every offseason, the owner goes to the GM and say, "Hey, why do we suck? We have Luka Doncic. Like, why do we suck?" And it's like, "Well, I don't know." And so like, okay, we'll blow it up. Let's give him a whole new roster. Let's try to do something new. Give Luka everything that we can, because he's obviously one of the best players in the world. Let's just try to put pieces around him to allow him to be successful and win us a championship. And so I feel like they've been repeating this thing for a few years where they've just brought in new pieces every year. And, this is just doing that again, where they've brought in some new pieces, trying to get Luka the right setup in order to win them a championship. Last year they missed the playoffs, and so I think step one is getting to the playoffs, and then finding a lineup that's actually going to stick and work, and keeping that year over year. I'm not sure if this is going to be the lineup that does it. I'm not even sure if this is the lineup that gets them into the playoffs. But I'm hopeful. I wanna watch Luka play as much as possible because of how great he is. So we'll see.
Yeah. So if the owner came to me and said, "Why do we suck?" I would say the same thing. I don't know, because this is like the Bulls. Like, how does this team not get into the playoffs when you have Luka and when you have the Kyrie Irving? So it's a really weird thing to see that a team with that talent that didn't even get in top 10 in the Western Conference. And so I worry a little bit about what their starting lineup will be if Derek Lively is ready for that stage. Grant Williams is a great addition. I think he'll play a lot, but I do expect the Mavericks to do better than they did last year. I do expect them to make the playoffs. I don't know in what capacity. I don't know if they'll have to go through a play-in first, but this team should not be outside the top 10. That's for sure. Okay, on to the Houston Rockets, who made a bunch of changes. This has been a team that has been one of the worst teams in the NBA for 5 years now, ever since James Harden left, at least. And so you can see two big additions here. Dylan Brooks, who was on the all defense at the NBA. We've talked about him before. We talked about him last year. I still remember Dustin just saying on air that Dylan Brooks is the best asshole in the NBA. uh, because he just is such a good defender, but he just gets under people's skin, and he comes over to play with the Rockets at small forward. Fred VanVleet comes over from the Raptors. You can see 19.7 assists per game for the Raptors. He's a big addition at point guard to join Jabari Smith, who was an all rookie player last year. I don't know how to say Alperen Sengun's name, if that's right. Uh, and Jalen Green, who was really good last year at shooting guard as well, 22 points a game. That just adding Brooks and VanVleet should improve this team immensely. Reggie Bullock comes over from the Mavericks. He was another one that joined the Spurs in the offseason. The Spurs waived him. The Rockets picked him up. He started a lot of games for the Mavericks, and so that's another big addition there. Jeff Green comes over from the Nuggets. Jock Landale comes over from the Suns. This is the other we talked about, Ausar Thompson. This is his brother. Is it Amen or Amen? I don't know how to pronounce his name. But Amen Thompson, another top first round pick, played with Ausar in Overtime Elite in the G League. Rather than Ausar, I'm projecting him to come off the bench, but he'll play quite a bit. You can see Kevin Porter coming off the bench last year, 19.6 assists a game. This guy was the starting point guard until Fred VanVleet came over, but he's going to be a big player coming off the bench there. Jayshawn Tate, Tari Eason was an all rookie player. The Giant, Boban Marjanovic, and rookie Cam Whitmore, addition Aaron Holiday from the Hawks. Ime Udoka comes over in his first season. He was the Celtics coach for one season in 21 and 22. Went to the NBA Finals in his first year with the Celtics. And then, as we all know, last year there was some inappropriate behavior between him and a staff member that got him fired from the Celtics. But now he's taking over as the Rockets head coach, along with Royal Ivy and Tiago Splitter, both in their first seasons as well. Those are guys that are not far removed from playing in the NBA themselves. So, Dustin, Rockets.
I like the additions I make. Fred VanVleet has the opportunity to really break out. He led Toronto, for the last several years, and is an all-star player. And so he's the opportunity to come over here and be the guy over here. And so I'm excited to do that. I think that his presence there will really help, really help these young players who have been carrying the team to blossom and to elevate them above the bottom of the West. Not too many places. I still expect them to be somewhere between 12 and 15, but still it'll help them grow. I think it's going to be a great boost, especially for Jalen Green and Jabari Smith.
Yeah, I love their additions, both Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet, and then you also get Reggie Bullock in that second unit too. I think the Rockets will be significantly improved from last year. They could double their wins, like we said about the Pistons. That's not going to get them anywhere still, but they could be a lot better. I think they will. I think they're going to get out of the cellar of the Western Conference. They're going to get out of the cellar of their own division. But what happens past that, they still need another year. I love Ime Udoka as the head coach.
First thing that I gotta say is when you show me the picture of Reggie Bullock, it looks like he's already dressed for a Halloween costume with like fingers coming out of his head, is what it looks like. So I was like, what in the world is that? Looks like he's someone like grabbing his head or something. So anyway, I don't know if I have a whole lot more to add. At least previously they haven't been winning. Well, okay, it looks like the last 2 years they haven't had more. Last 3 years they haven't even had more than 23, 24 wins. So they're really struggling. And I could be wrong about this, but it seems like it's ever since James Harden left.
Yep.
And so they got to figure out how to replace someone like James Harden, which is difficult. He was a great player. And that's just kind of where they're at right now. They're in a rough spot. So I don't really know what to expect, but they just got to figure out how to gel together as a team and get out of the cellar, which I don't know if they will do or not. We'll see.
Okay. Moving on to the middle team in this division, the Memphis Grizzlies. A lot to talk about for the Grizzlies, but first of all, John Morant will be suspended for how many is it, Dustin? Do you remember? The first 12
Like
games, is
20,
it?
I think it's 25 or something like
25
that.
games. So a good chunk of the season, about a little more than a quarter of the season, he's going to be suspended for his second uh, offense in waving a weapon around and all that. And so we've talked about him before. We had a whole show around him, I think, about this guy needs to grow up, realize that he is an all-star, that basketball is his future. He's not a gangster. But when he's on the court, you can see how good this guy is. 26 points, 8 assists a game. We've seen his insane athleticism. He's led the Grizzlies to where they have been. So really good player. Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson, who was the defensive player of the year last year and an all-star. Steven Adams, recovering from injury, but he should be back pretty soon. And then they add Marcus Smart from the Celtics, who was only the heart and soul of the Boston Celtics. And so you bring that kind of attitude, that kind of enthusiasm over to the Grizzlies, who just operate on grit and grind anyway. He's a perfect fit for the Grizzlies, in my opinion. This is a really good starting lineup when John Morant comes back after 25 games. Their depth, they added Derrick Rose in the offseason, hometown kid. He went to the University of Memphis. Yeah, he's actually from Chicago, but he went to the University of Memphis. Bring him over from New York. He's going to start for John Morant for those 25 games. He's not the MVP player that he was 12 years ago, but he showed a lot in New York last year. So Luke Kennard, 54% from three. The guy was just jacking up those 3-point shots. GG Jackson and Tariq Biberovic are their 2 draft picks. Seeing what they'll be able to do. Shaquille Harrison added from the Lakers as well. So Taylor Jenkins in his 5th season as head coach of the Grizzlies, bringing over Vitaly Potapenko and Blake Ahern are the 2 assistant coaches there. They've been there for a while as well. Is this me? It's me. Okay. I think I gave some of my thoughts right there, but if they stay healthy and when John Morant comes back, there's not many better starting lineups than the Grizzlies have. This is a really good lineup. This is not only a Western Conference contending team, this is a team that could contend for even further than that. This is an NBA Finals contending team. If they remain healthy and they remain out of trouble, John Morant, this is a team that has no ceiling. I'm really high on the Grizzlies this year. Obviously, they'll have to manage Ja being out for a third of the season, but I think they can do that with bringing over Derrick Rose and having some of the players that they already have on that team. Cody.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess my question, you have to remind me. I know he was suspended. John Morant was suspended a little bit last year. When was that? Was that beginning of the season?
Beginning, it was middle of the year.
Middle to the end, yeah.
Okay. Because I was looking at it, and I mean, they still won 51 games last year. That's without Ja being in the lineup for, I don't remember how many games, but it was at least 12 or something, wasn't it, last year? Or how long?
It's something like that. I forget, 10 or 12.
So I mean, the fact that they can still win, at least 41 games, right? Without John Morant, I'm sure they won some of those games without him anyway. Is promising in some sense, and so I think that they can figure it out. They can do okay without him. Not great, but they'll survive without him. But then once he comes back, they'll need him to show up and be smart and play out. And they got a bright future for the season. So I think it's impressive that they had 51 wins with John Morant suspended for a quarter of it or a little under a quarter of it. So I guess that's my take on
that. So I really like what this team has done with the lineup changes, that they kept their core, but were able to bring in Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose. To talk about Derrick Rose, so many people have said John Morant is he plays the same as Derrick Rose did when he won MVP, and Ja Morant is absolutely capable of winning an MVP. And they're just a spitting image of each other in a lot of ways. And so Derrick Rose, when he signed with the Grizzlies, he kind of sent a letter, or published a letter that he had sent to Ja Morant, where he basically said, "Hey, I'm here, and I'm not here to babysit you. I'm not here to guide you in life. I'm here to help you win a title. Everything that you make in your choices in your life, that's on you. But if you want to learn how to win an MVP, I can do that. So show up and play." And that's just great leadership, is just to say, "Hey, if you want to be the best that you can be, that's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to babysit you." And so I really like this, and I don't know if I see a realistic situation that this team finishes not in the top half of the playoff contenders in the West.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Moving on. New Orleans Pelicans. Zion Williamson is the first one we have to talk about here. He was an all-star last year, 26.7 rebounds a game, but his availability is still coming into question. He wasn't available at the end of last year. He was injured. He's been injured more often than he has been playing in the NBA. Missed pretty much the entirety of his first year, missed a lot of the last couple of years as well. So is this guy available to play? When he is, he's amazing. He's great. He's worthy of the first overall pick that he was. But in order for the Pelicans to go where they want to go, he has to be available, right? And this is a potential big three. You have Zion, you have Brandon Ingram, and you have CJ McCollum. All are 20 plus points per game scorers. And so if all three are playing, that's really good. Then you only have Jonas Valanciunas as well at center, who's been really good throughout his career. He was good with the Pelicans last year. Herbert Jones is the lone guy over there at small forward that maybe doesn't make up a great position on the team, but he's a great defender, and that's important as well. The depth. Cody Zeller is the only addition they made from veteran addition. He comes over from the Eastern Conference champion Heat to kind of help Jonas Valanciunas there. Trey Murphy is an important player last year, as well as Najee Marshall and Jose Alvarado. Their draft pick Jordan Hawkins out of UConn, national championship over there at UConn as well. He'll play quite a bit there. So the depth remains fairly the same with the additions of Zeller and Hawkins. Willie Green in his third season as head coach. They bring over James Borrego, who was the Hornets head coach for 4 or 5 years, to kind of round out that head coaching staff, along with Jaron Collins, who's also in his third season.
This is me. Is that correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So 42 wins last year with, and I assume I wasn't really sure about what Zion was going on last year with him. Was he injured for most of last year as well?
The end of last year.
Yeah.
End of last year. Okay. So 42 wins with him missing the end of the year. We, as you're saying, Scott, we all know how good Zion is, and so it does come down to his availability. It comes down to how well the bench can also support this starting lineup. And so I guess I'm kind of in that spot where I'm not really sure what to expect. It all kind of comes down to Zion. So I think we could see if he plays for the whole season, we could see close to maybe a 50-win season for them. But if he doesn't play, we could see maybe even a 30-win season. And so it's somewhere around there, and I don't really know what to expect coming from that. So I'll leave it to the expert Dustin and Scott here to tell us what's going on here.
To me, all right. So to talk about Zion Williamson, his availability and his health, my hot take on Zion is if he can play a full season, he can win MVP. He's absolutely one of the best players in the league if he can be out there every single game. He's extremely exciting to watch. Some of their depth, Herbert Jones and Jose Alvarado. They're two players. Nobody's going to have a poster of them in the room, but they might be the two best defenders in the entire league. These are fantastic defenders, and they're the soul of the team. And so if you want to watch hustle and defense and skill, just watch highlight of Herbert Jones and Jose Alvarado from last year or two. And then with their big three, I think that this is a great team, and it really does come down to the health of the team, Zion in particular. And if he can play an entire season, this can be the top team in the West, and I believe that.
Yeah, I mentioned that big three. When you have Zion and you have Brandon Ingram and you have CJ McCollum, there's no reason you shouldn't be a top team. And projecting things out, you can't. You can realistically say, yeah, Zion's probably going to miss a few games, but hopefully it's not 50 games like he's done the first couple seasons. And so you have to project that, okay, if they're healthy, this is where they're going. And to me, if they're healthy, they're going to be a playoff team, and they're going to be a good playoff team. Okay. Last team in this division, the San Antonio Spurs. A really good team for decades, right? Won 5 championships in the last 20 years. This has been a dynasty of great proportions. Tim Duncan, David Robinson, both top 1 picks, joined by Victor Wembanyama, the first overall pick this year, coming out of France. You can see 7'5", 210 pounds. So he's a pole, but 7'5", he's a very tall pole. And has all the traits. They've been asking him, what position do you play? And you see in the summer league that he's played pretty much all the positions. This guy can take the ball down the court as a point guard. He can play in the post. He doesn't shoot the three very well, but he can play on the perimeter. Jeremy Sochan was an all-rookie player last year, kind of a tweener as far as where he fits, because kind of more of a small forward build, but he played a lot more of power forward, but he also can play a little bit of guard. And so where does this guy fit? Doug McDermott will step up into the starting lineup, a great 3-point shooter. Keldon Johnson has been their best player the last couple of years. Another kind of guy that's played some forward, even power forward. This is a team full of players that don't really fit in one position, but they're all over the place, except for Trey Jones. Trey Jones is the point guard, and that's all he plays, and he's a good point guard. The other ones are kind of all over the place, and so talking about where those guys fit. Depth, the only veteran addition they made was Cedi Osman, from the Cavaliers, but they also drafted, I don't know how to say this name, Sidi Sissoko, out of France as well in the second round. Zach Collins was the starting center last year, so he's going to play a lot for to help Victor Wembanyama kind of get up to speed. Devin Vassell is a real good 6th man. You can see almost 19 points a game last year coming off the bench. Devontae Graham is another good player that comes off the bench. Those two combined with their starting lineup, that's going to be their core. Greg Popovich is in his 27th season. That's a long time. He's won over 1,300 games for the Spurs and 5 NBA championships, most recently almost 10 years ago. So it's been a while for the Spurs to actually win a championship, but who knows how long Greg Popovich is going to continue to go. But 27 years, already a Hall of Famer. And Brett Brown rejoins the Spurs as an assistant coach. Brett Brown was an assistant for the Spurs for many years before taking the head coach role of the 76ers. Now he's back, along with Darius Angela in his 4th season. So, Dustin, Spurs.
Greg Popovich is he's not a respecter of persons. He's not gonna be the kind of guy that says, okay, give Wembanyama the ball and let him do his thing. He's gonna really make sure that he hones his skills and put him in the right situation. We've talked about Wemby a lot before on our podcast. I think that his ups are his size, and his shooting stroke, and his downs is literally everything else, including his decision making. And so I think he's going to have a rough first season. I think he has a lot to learn. He needs to learn how to play basketball. And so it's going to be a struggle. But Pop, if Wemby can just really humble himself and just learn and spend a lot of time in the gym, Pop's going to hone his skill and can potentially turn him into a great player in a few years from now. So I'm excited to see if I can be right about my prediction with Wemby. But overall, I'm not expecting a good team. I think their ceiling is probably like 13th in the West, bottom of the division, maybe their ceiling. So we'll see what happens for that. That's all I got to say about the Spurs.
Yeah. Greg Popovich, we talked about him a few months ago, I think, and I think he was on the precipice of retiring, and then they get this first overall pick, and he's like, "Oh, I'll coach one more year," and so, yeah, I'm with you with Wemby. He's a freak, 7'5", and he did a lot of things in France. Like I said, as far as taking the ball up the court as well as anything else, you try to do that in real NBA game, and that ball is going to be gone before he knows it. So that's a long way for the ball to go down to the court, and so that's why point guards are a lot smaller sometimes. So yeah, just the fact that they're figuring out who's on this team and what positions they play. There's 4 guys here that don't play real positions. They just play everywhere that they can go, and try to impact a game from any kind of position, which is a lot of NBA is going positionless basketball, and the Spurs are leaning hard into that with this lineup. But I like their depth more than their starting lineup, which is you don't see very often. I like Devin Vassell. I like Devontae Graham, and I think their depth will be strong, but they're going to have to lean on it hard.
Yeah, I agree with both of you with Wemby. That was my concern, my thought about it. But at the same time, I feel like Greg Popovich would probably be the best coach for him right now, and so I feel like he's in a good spot to develop and to learn to play and learn to play real big boy basketball, basketball. And so I expect a lot from Greg Popovich for him, but as you guys are saying, as far as this year goes, I don't expect it to be a sensational season, but we should see Wemby turn into quite the player, determining how long Popovich coaches for.
Okay, one more share screen here if I can find it. Here we go. Okay. All right, this is what we all picked. All 3 of us have the Grizzlies winning this division. I actually had the Mavericks finishing second over the Pelicans. I'm kind of thinking that through right now too, but I was really intrigued by the additions that they made, and just thinking that Luka and Kyrie could play really well. 2 of us have the Spurs finishing last. Cody has the Rockets, but any talk, obviously we all agree that the Grizzlies are finishing first, but any talk about the 2 through 5 here?
I'm sad to say that I don't have high expectations for the Mavericks. I mean, last year they had a great roster, a great lineup, a great team, and couldn't make the playoffs. Sure, they've made some changes, like we talked about, but again, I'm just not high on them being able to be a successful team this season. I hope I'm wrong, because I want to see Luka in the playoffs.
Yeah, I do have 3 teams out of this division making the playoffs, making that 8-team field. Grizzlies, Mavericks, and Pelicans, I think will all make that field. But I'm hoping for a big Pelicans run as long as Williamson is there. I like the Pelicans, and I'm hoping for that. I like the Mavericks too.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a lot to say or to add to this, but I yeah, I don't know if I have a lot to say.
Okay. Well, that finishes today. Next week we are talking about the Atlantic and the Pacific. So Eastern and Western, and we'll cover those 10 teams next week. Any last thoughts in the last 4 minutes? Okay. Thanks everyone. We'll talk to you next week.